In one corner, a budget mini PC forged in the factories of Shenzhen, featuring a China market exclusive Ryzen chip you've probably never heard of. In the other, a homegrown Linux distro built in the shadows of the Rocky Mountains by a scrappy American company determined to take on the desktop world. East meets West, Silicon meets source code. This is Chinese mini PC meets American Linux. All right, maybe that intro was a little over the top, but the title's not entirely clickbait. This is the GMKTec K12, a mini PC made in China, powered by a slightly off-spec Ryzen 7 255H. Basically a custom chip for the Chinese market, but it's widely available here in the US, and honestly, one of the more interesting budget systems I've reviewed recently. And today I'm pairing it with a Linux distribution developed by System76, a company headquartered just about an hour up the road from me here in Colorado. So yes, it's kind of American Linux, but let's be real, Linux is a global project. The kernel, the desktop environments, the packages, the bug fixes, they come from developers all over the world. That's kind of the whole point. So why PopOS? Well, honestly, other than the Colorado connection, I've been waiting for an excuse to try out the new beta release of PopOS 24.04, featuring the long-awaited Cosmic desktop environment, completely rewritten in Rust and fully Wayland native. So in this video, I've got two main goals. First, see how well Linux runs on the GMKTec K12, hardware compatibility, performance versus Windows, and whether it's a good daily driver, and more so explore the latest Cosmic desktop, its features, quirks, and how it compares to other popular environments like GNOME and KDE. Stick around, I've got real benchmark numbers, a full compatibility rundown, and a closer look at what Cosmic is actually like to use. But to start, let's take a look at our mini PC. The GMKTec K12 is powered by the Ryzen 7 255H, an 8-core 16-thread Zen 4 CPU with a base clock of 3.8 GHz and boosts up to 4.9 GHz, 16 megabytes of L3 cache, and a configurable TDP between 35 and 54 watts. However, in performance mode, it can sustain 65 watts with short bursts up to 70 watts. And for those trying to keep AMD's naming scheme straight, well, don't, but the 255H is basically a downclocked 8845HS with the NPU chopped off. On the graphics side, it's running the integrated Radeon 780M built on RDNA 3 with 12 compute units clocked up to 2.6 GHz. This unit ships with 32 gigabytes of DDR5 5600 SODIMM RAM, a 1TB Crucial P3 Plus Gen 4 NVMe SSD, and room for up to 24 terabytes of total storage thanks to 2 additional PCIe Gen 4 M.2 slots. Connectivity includes a dual 2.5 gigabit LAN, a full spread of USB-A and USB-C ports, including USB 4, along with HDMI 2.1, DisplayPort 1.4, and a PCI Gen 4 Oculink port for eGPU support. Wi-Fi 6E and Bluetooth 5.2 is handled by a MediaTek card, which has historically had problems on Linux paired with certain routers. We'll see how PopOS handles it. Cooling is handled by a vapor chamber, heatsink, and fan, and a 40mm ARGB case fan. In terms of performance, Geekbench 6 returned a 2536 single-core and 12602 multi-core score. GPU performance was about what you expect from RDNA 3. It handled web acceleration, 4K playback, and even some light gaming with ease. For the full Windows-based review, including thermals, benchmark breakdowns, and hardware teardown, I'll leave a link in the video down in the description. Let's get our distro of the day installed. I'll head over to System76 website and click on the PopOS 24.04 beta announcement banner. Here you'll find the installation ISOs available for both Intel AMD graphics-based systems and NVIDIA-based systems. Since we're working with a Ryzen-powered mini PC with integrated graphics, I'm downloading the AMD 64 ISO. Once that's downloaded, fire up your USB writer of choice. I'm using Balena Etcher. It's cross-platform and dead simple. Click Flash from File, select the PopOS ISO, then choose the USB device you want to write to and click Flash. While that's doing its thing, I'm going to prep the K12 by booting into the UEFI menu. In the main tab, I'll switch the system to performance mode to give us full power during setup and testing. Then in the security tab, I'll disable secure boot. That's important because PopOS doesn't support it out of the box. By now, the USB drive is ready. I'll plug it into the K12, hit save and restart, and on reboot, we should land in the PopOS live environment. At this point, you can poke around and test things out, but we'll be digging into that soon enough, so I'm going straight to the installer. This is System76 custom installer, and it's straightforward. Choose your language, keyboard layout, and set your location. Then you'll have the option to do a clean install or go into advanced install. Advanced lets you manually partition the disk, set up dual boot, or install to a specific volume. But for this video, I'm going with a clean install. Erase everything and start fresh. Now, best practice says you should encrypt your drive, especially on a laptop or portable system, but since I might be reselling this mini PC, I'm skipping encryption to avoid any passphrase handoff issues. If the next owner wants encryption, they can reinstall PopOS and set that up themselves. And that's it. The installation takes a few minutes, and when it's done, restart the device and you're in. PopOS is officially installed and ready to go. And now we can get a proper look at PopOS, and more specifically the brand new, completely rewritten Cosmic desktop environment. This is System76's vision for the future of the Linux desktop, and it's a big swing. Before we dive into what Cosmic actually looks and feels like to use, let's quickly talk about PopOS itself, what it is, where it came from, and why it's worth paying attention to. PopOS is developed by System76, a Linux-focused hardware company based right here in Colorado. They make desktops, laptops, and workstations specifically designed to run Linux, and PopOS is their custom operating system originally built on top of Ubuntu. The idea is to provide a clean, polished Linux experience that works perfectly with their hardware, kind of like how macOS pairs with Apple machines, but the key difference is that PopOS is fully open source. You're free to tweak it, strip it down, or swap it out for another distro entirely. Now, PopOS might be based on Ubuntu, but it doesn't just retheme it. It removes a lot of the cruft, like snap packages and Canonical's promotional content, and adds its own tooling. The firmware manager, the curated PopOS shop for apps, and the out-of-box support for features like auto-tiling window management and full disk encryption are all part of the PopOS experience. It also leans into modern workflows in a way that makes it feel lighter and more responsive than stock Ubuntu. Normally, PopOS follows the Ubuntu release schedule, but recently System76 skipped a couple of releases to put all their focus into building Cosmic, their new desktop environment. And Cosmic is more than just a skin on top of GNOME. This version is a full rewrite from scratch using the Rust program language, and it's designed to take full advantage of Wayland, Linux modern display protocol. Now, I'm not a Rust developer, and I'm not going to pretend I can explain all the technical pros and cons of Rust versus C++, but broadly speaking, the benefit here is that Rust enforces memory safety at compile time. That means fewer bugs, fewer crashes, and code that's easier to maintain over time. It's fast, it's modern, and it's well suited for projects that care about reliability and performance. Of course, the trade-off is that Rust is newer, and building something as complex as a desktop environment with it comes with a learning curve. There are fewer mature libraries, and it can be a bit of a lonely road compared to GNOME or KDE's ecosystems. But System76 is committed to it fully. That commitment also means cutting ties with the old. Cosmic completely drops X11, the legacy display system that Linux desktops have used for decades. In its place, Wayland provides a more modern, streamlined graphics stack. For most users, the difference is subtle but meaningful. Animations are smoother, high DPI scaling works properly even across multiple monitors, touchpad gestures feel more fluid, and from a security standpoint, Wayland has a cleaner, sandboxed architecture that makes it harder for rogue apps to snoop on your inputs or hijack your screen. That said, Wayland isn't perfect. There are some gaps. If you rely on full-feature remote desktop access, certain screen capture tools, or older applications that were never updated to support Wayland, you might run into some friction. It's getting better all the time, but for power users with niche workflows, these gaps can still be a deal breaker. But for most people, especially those running up-to-date hardware like this K12, Cosmic on Wayland promises a faster, more stable desktop experience that's built to last. So now that we covered the why behind PopOS and Cosmic, let's take a look at how it actually works in practice. On first boot, we're greeted by Cosmic's Greeter, System76 own Rust-based login manager built specifically for the new desktop. It replaces GDM entirely and runs natively on Wayland. Cosmic Greeter supports dark and light themes, high DPI scaling, and ties in tightly with the rest of the Cosmic settings stack. So everything from the login screen to the desktop feels visually and functionally consistent. After logging in, we land in the Welcome app, which guides us through the initial setup process. First up are accessibility options. Cosmic has made some real progress here, especially since the earlier alpha releases. Right from the start, users can enable screen reader, zoom and magnification, high contrast mode, and large text. And unlike older implementations that felt bolted on, these settings now carry over seamlessly into the session thanks to deeper integration with Cosmic's settings system. It's still a work in progress, but it's much more usable than earlier builds. Next comes Wi-Fi setup, and this is where things got frustrating. The GMKTec K12 uses a MediaTek Wi-Fi 6E adapter, and MediaTek drivers under Linux have historically been hit or miss, especially when connected to certain access points. PopOS recognized the adapter just fine, but during setup, it kept trying to connect to every nearby network except the one I actually wanted. After some back and forth, I got it connected to my main Wi-Fi 6 network, but it kept auto-switching to other saved networks in the background. Not ideal. Once Wi-Fi was sorted, the setup wizard moved on to the usual basics: language, keyboard, layout, time zone, nothing unusual here. Then we hit appearance customization, and this is where Cosmic starts to shine. Right away, you get to pick between several different light or dark modes. I went with Cosmic Dark, but we'll dig deeper into theming and appearance settings a little later. After that, you can choose your panel and dock layout. The default places the panel up top and the dock at the bottom, a very GNOME-like arrangement, but Cosmic gives you the option to move both to the bottom of the screen, which gives it a more KDE plasma feel, and that's the one I went with for now. Next, you get to pick your Windows management style. You can run Cosmic in either a traditional floating window layout or a full tiling Windows manager. Now, PopOS has supported tiling for a while in its GNOME-based builds, but this new Cosmic implementation is a lot more flexible and user-friendly. I stuck with the floating windows for the initial setup just so I can show you how easy it is to switch back and forth between workspaces types later. Finally, the Welcome app gives you a quick rundown of the keyboard shortcuts, mostly for tiling and launching apps with Cosmic Launcher. And that's it. Setup is complete, and we're dropped into the full desktop experience, ready to explore. As always, the first thing I do is update the system. Now, for me, it's second nature to jump into the terminal and run a few commands, but if you're more comfortable with a graphical interface, Cosmic makes it easy. Just open the Cosmic Store, click the Updates tab on the left, hit check for updates, then click Update All, and that's it. The system is up to date. The Cosmic Store also provides a curated catalog of software and applications ready to install. We'll explore that a bit later, but first I want to show off what makes Cosmic really stand out from a user experience perspective. And that's the nearly seamless ability to switch between floating and tiling Windows managers. By default, if I start launching apps, they open up as separate windows, freely floating on the desktop, exactly like you'd see in Windows, Mac OS, or even default GNOME or KDE Plasma setups. I can click, drag, and resize them with the mouse, pretty standard desktop behavior, but down in the panel, Cosmic includes a toggle. Flip that switch and bam, everything instantly switches to tiling mode. Now, all open apps snap into neatly arranged tiles across the active workspace. I can use the keyboard to switch between windows, move focus, resize, and rearrange tiles, or if you prefer, the mouse can still drag and resize windows manually, even in tiling mode. Cosmic supports both interaction styles, which makes it way more approachable than traditional tiling-only environments like i3 or Sway. Opening a new app, it's dropped into its own tile automatically, and if I spin up a new virtual desktop or workspace, it starts in floating mode by default, even if your previous workspace was tiled, but you can change that behavior if you prefer consistent tiling across all workspaces. Now, this is still beta software, so it's not without issues. For example, when I launched the Steam client, it ignored the tiling mode entirely and opened up as a floating window. That's a known quirk. Some apps just aren't well behaved under Wayland or don't play nicely with Windows managers that expect tiling hints. And that's part of the trade-off with building a brand new desktop environment from scratch. Cosmic is still working out some of the compatibility kinks, and we'll run into at least one or more of those later in the video, but the foundation they've laid here for flexible per workspace window management is genuinely impressive, and for me, it's one of the most exciting parts of the Cosmic experience. In addition to the new desktop environment itself, System 76 has built a full set of supporting applications, everything you'd expect from a complete desktop experience. A file explorer, media player, terminal, text editors, image viewer, and a screenshot utility, all written natively for Cosmic. Cosmic Files is the default file manager. It covers basic navigation, previews, sortings, but what stood out for me was how smoothly it handled network shares over SMB. It automatically detected my NAS, prompted me for credentials, and mapped the shared folder as a persistent mount point without any fuss. That's something even GNOME and KDE occasionally trip over. The Cosmic Media Player is pretty minimal, no library management, playlist, or visualizations, but it does one thing well. When I dropped in a movie file that required missing codecs, it immediately prompted me to install the correct ones. I didn't have to Google anything or open a terminal. It just downloaded and installed the necessary packages automatically, and the video then started playing. The image viewer is clean and fast with basic slideshow and zoom controls, and it shows helpful metadata at a glance, including resolution and file type, without having to dig through a separate properties window. The screenshot app lets you quickly capture full screen, a specific window, or drag a custom selection area. It's simple, fast, and integrates cleanly into the workflow without needing an external tool like Flameshot. There's also the Cosmic Terminal, which offers multi-tab support and integrates with Cosmic dark or light theming and keyboard shortcuts. It's fast, minimal, and looks great out of the box. The Cosmic text editor is equally straightforward, a clean, distraction-free space for editing code or config files with syntax highlighting and autosave support. Now, for apps that don't yet have native Cosmic versions like the document viewer, disk partition utility, archive manager, and password manager, PopOS defaults to the GNOME versions. They're fully functional and theme consistent for the most part. You don't feel like you're jumping between different environments. The distro also comes with a healthy set of pre-installed applications: LibreOffice for documents and spreadsheets, GIMP for image editing, Thunderbird for email, Firefox for web browsing, and both Xterm and Vim for the terminal and editing crowd. Dead simple. For anything else, the Cosmic Store gives you access to a wide range of software. It supports both traditional system packages and Flatpaks from the FlatHub repository, which is pre-installed and enabled by default. You'll often see multiple versions of the same app listed, and in most cases, the store will default to whichever one is better optimized or more stable. For example, the Brave browser is only available as a Flatpak, so that's what you get. Discord, on the other hand, has both Flatpak and system packages versions available, but the store defaults to the Flatpak. Meanwhile, Lutris defaults to the system package, likely because that version includes custom tweaks for compatibility with PopOS libraries and gaming stack. And that brings me to one of the smoother experiences I have had so far: Steam. Installing Steam through the Cosmic Store system package option is a one-click process. It comes pre-configured with Proton support enabled, no extra setup required, and if you want to expand your compatibility options, the store also includes Proton Up Qt, which makes it easy to install and manage the latest GE Proton builds usable in Steam, Lutris, Heroic, and other launchers. That level of software integration isn't unique to Cosmic, but the fact that it's already this polished in a beta release is a great sign of where things are headed. As far as the underlying Linux kernel, out of the box, we're working with the mainline kernel version 6.16.3, which I believe is just one minor version below the absolute latest mainline. They included a custom Mesa version 25.1.5, again, is within 6 weeks, I think, of the most current vanilla version, but should include patches, bug fixes, and tighter optimization with the kernel and distro. The last thing I want to look at before jumping into performance numbers is the Cosmic system settings. Now, the settings menu in Cosmic isn't quite as deep or granular as what you'll find in GNOME or Plasma, but all the fundamentals are here and everything's laid out in a way that's clean and intuitive. Once I got past my initial network setup hiccup and after the first system update, Wi-Fi started working flawlessly. The connection to my primary access point was stable and fast, and I had no further issues with random disconnects or network switching. Bluetooth also worked fine. I was able to connect and pair earbuds and keyboard without any pairing problems. In the display settings, I didn't encounter any issues with high DPI scaling, high or variable refresh rates, or multi-monitor setups. Fractional scaling worked exactly as expected, even across a mix of standard and high-resolution monitors. Cosmic does include X11 compatibility via X-Wayland, so legacy applications that don't support Wayland natively still should run fine. I didn't run into any graphical glitches or rendering issues with older apps like Steam or Xterm. For audio, both USB and analog outputs worked without issue. I didn't test multiple channel analog, surround, or pro audio interfaces, but basic playback and output switching were solid on the K12. Power management is handled by the standard power profiles daemon, and it worked as expected. I was able to toggle between the balanced and performance mode directly from the system menu, and the performance profile held the K12 at its full TDP under load without any issues. Now, jumping back up to the desktop settings, this is where Cosmic really starts to feel like its own thing. You can fully customize the appearance and behavior of the user interface, from choosing a wallpaper to adjusting how your panel and dock behave. During setup, I moved both the panel and dock to the bottom of the screen, but I can easily move them back up top, dock them to the sides, or even center them. I can adjust their size, opacity, visual style, and customize what applets are visible, like the clock, system tray, or workspace indicator. Everything I can do on the panel, I can also do to the dock independently, so you can set them up to match your preferred workflow, whether that's GNOME style, Plasma style, or some completely custom. Finally, in the appearance menu, Cosmic gives you detailed control over how your desktop looks. You can change Windows themes, spacing, font styles, accent colors, and even how application content is laid out inside the window. It's not quite as extensive as KDE theming system yet, but for a beta release of a brand new desktop environment, it's already incredibly flexible. Now, one of the complications with Cosmic, especially as a brand new desktop environment, is legacy Toolkit support. Most Linux desktops applications are built either using GTK or Qt. These are graphical user interface, GUI toolkits that provide all the visual building blocks of an app. Buttons, sliders, menus, windows decorations, you name it. They're not just about looks, they're also how applications interact with the system, respond to input, and manage layout and accessibility. GTK is most closely associated with GNOME and its ecosystem, while Qt is used heavily by KDE Plasma and many cross-platform apps. The challenge is that each toolkit handles theming, scaling, and rendering a little differently, and not every desktop environment can apply its visual style consistently to both. This leads to some apps looking out of place, misaligned, or even partially broken on certain desktops. This isn't new. Theming issues between GTK and Qt apps have been a long-standing problem in Linux, but Cosmic brings a fresh twist because it's built from scratch in Rust with its own native Cosmic widget toolkit. It doesn't inherit GTK or Qt theming behavior at all. That means apps built with either toolkit are essentially foreign objects in the Cosmic environment, and you're likely to run into visual inconsistencies from both camps. Take Goverlay, for example. It's a GTK-based app, and you can see here that it has some pretty obviously theming issues in Cosmic. Again, this isn't unique to Cosmic, but what's different here is that you're just as likely to run into quirks with Qt-based apps too. So rather than battling just one toolkit like you might on GNOME or KDE on Cosmic, you're open to theming problems from both directions. To be clear, this isn't a deal breaker and it's something System 76 is aware of, but until more apps are written using Cosmic's native toolkit or additional compatibility layers are introduced, this kind of visual inconsistency is something early adopters are just gonna have to live with. Okay, let's take a quick look at how PopOS compares to Windows 11 on the GMKTec K12 when it comes to real-world performance. Considering that the AMD SoC in this system, the Ryzen 7 255H, is already a couple of generations old, and the Linux kernel and Mesa stack in PopOS are fairly current, I wasn't expecting a dramatic difference between the two operating systems, and for the most part, I didn't see one. In Geekbench 6, PopOS delivers about a 4% improvement in multi-core performance, likely thanks to Linux' more aggressive and efficient AMD CPU scheduler. Single-core performance was up just 2.5%, which falls well within the margin for driver and scheduler differences. For those who like to dig into the numbers, I've linked a full suite of benchmark data in the video description, including synthetics test, application workloads, and compile times. As a quick example, I ran a Linux kernel compile test natively in PopOS using the default configuration. The K12 compiled the kernel in just under 116 seconds, which is very respectable for a compact system like this. That puts it in the same ballpark as the Ryzen 7 5700X or a Core i5-12600K when those chips are running at stock clocks in desktop systems. For a 65-watt mobile chip in a mini PC, that's impressive. Gaming performance, however, told a more complicated story. In Baldur's Gate 3, I ran into a brand new issue for me anyway. The launcher refused to start at all under Linux as a result, and despite my manual override attempts, the game defaulted to Vulkan mode, which we know performs worse than DirectX 11 on Radeon GPUs in many titles. Unsurprisingly, frame rates took a noticeable hit compared to my Windows 11 results. Then there was Doom Eternal, which flipped the issue. The new mod launcher launched by default, but the actual Doom executable wouldn't start even after applying the usual workaround and forcing Proton versions. This is a known issue with the latest build of Doom and the new launcher, but it's worth noting that in other recent distros I've tested, like Arch, Fedora, and Bazzite, it's worked out of the box, so something in PopOS's build or the Steam package may still need ironing out. Counter-Strike 2 is another interesting one. On most systems I've tested, it actually performs better on Linux than on Windows, often by 5 to 10%. This wasn't the case here on the K12 running PopOS. Performance was slightly lower across the board. No crashes or bugs, just lower FPS overall. I don't have a clear answer for that one, but it could be related to the custom driver or runtime behavior under the new Cosmic stack. On the plus side, Borderlands 3 matched Windows performance almost exactly, and Shadow of the Tomb Raider actually ran significantly better on PopOS thanks to its strong Vulkan implementation and AMD driver optimizations. So while gaming on PopOS with Cosmic is definitely possible, and in some cases even superior to Windows, there's still a few edge cases and maybe some regressions. Overall, I came away impressed with PopOS 24.4 and the new Cosmic desktop environment. Despite being in beta, it already delivers a fast, functional, and highly customizable experience that feels like it belongs alongside the more mature Linux desktops out there. Of course, this is beta software, so bugs and performance regressions are part of the deal, but considering how far Cosmic had come since the early alpha builds, both in terms of stability and usability, I'm confident that the stable release will be a huge milestone, not just for System 76, but for the broader Linux desktop ecosystem. Now, there's an ongoing debate whether introducing another desktop environment helps or hurts Linux adoption. On one hand, segmentation of the desktop landscape can dilute development effort and introduce fragmentation. But on the other hand, choice is one of Linux's greatest strengths, and for many users, it's that freedom to tailor their system exactly the way they want is one of the reasons they fell in love with it. I think Cosmic adds to that diversity in a meaningful way, offering something new without trying to reinvent the wheel. I was also impressed, though not at all surprised, that PopOS and Cosmic ran perfectly well on third-party hardware like this GMKTec Mini PC. Yes, System 76 designs PopOS primarily for their own laptops and desktops, but it's clear that they haven't locked anyone out. Aside from a few minor quirks, everything worked right out of the box. Graphics, Wi-Fi, Bluetooth, display scaling, and audio, that level of out-of-the-box compatibility speaks well to both the distro and the work the broader Linux community has done around hardware enablement. So if you're curious about what's next for PopOS or just want to try a desktop that breaks from tradition while still feeling approachable, Cosmic is already worth checking out, and I'll definitely be keeping a close eye on the stable release when it lands.